couple of comments on how valid is this Hanseatic League as an inspiration for what we might learn?
I think it's spot on. It's spot on for a series of reasons that actually we are going back to that model for a series of reasons. And I meant to come here with some technical ideas. Instead, it has to be philosophical. And it has to be philosophical for three reasons. The first reason is the Roman Empire. The second reason is identity, and I'll tell you about the third a bit later. Why the Roman Empire was so successful? Because at some point, all countries, all territories conquered by the Roman Empire invented the idea of Roman citizenship. So regardless of your culture or who you were, where you came from, by becoming Roman citizen, you just on the road to a system of shared values and common rules applying across the board. In fact, in Rome, there's never been a Roman emperor. Diocletiano was from Croatia. Traiano was from Spain. Marco Aurelio was from Germany, and so was Commodus. That is to say, the identity is really a big, important starting point in understanding where the world is going and what our future is going to be. Take me, for an example. I'm from Italy. That makes me European, makes me Mediterranean, makes me Latin, makes me Southern European. And the other thing is, do we have an identity based on passport and territory, or we have an identity based on life experiences? I am closer to someone who immigrated to the United States, went through an Ivy League education, worked in a global financial center, and then is now somewhere else? Or am I closer to someone who was born, raised in Italy, married there, and hangs out at night with his high school mates? I mean, I think the Hanseatic League has been the past, but it's also going to be the future. And the third reason was Lex Mercatoria. In the 14th century, traders and merchants developed a body of law that was their own specific body of law, the Lex Mercatoria, over and beyond state laws or national applicable laws. And that's what we see today. The global financial centers are becoming increasingly independent. Hong Kong is a city-state. Singapore is a city-state. Channel Islands are independent. Is there still space for national global financial services centers? I don't think so. And we need to also start thinking about global financial services centers and democracy. Are the two things still able to go hand in hand? The pace, speed, and decisions required to make a global financial services center efficient. Are they compatible with the pace, processes, and rituals of democracy? So on this note, I will turn back to Michael.
Thank you, Professor Schmidt-Trentz. I mean, we featured you there, and to move us on to were some of the levers that we can press. You know, what dials and buttons are there for us in this new landscape? And Bepi, you've done some very interesting things in Milan, at least in terms of legislation you've been pushing in Rome about Milan. I was wondering if you could just explain to the audience quickly what you've been doing.
Sure. And all of this actually goes in the vein of what we're discussing here. The idea that financial services centers are creatures of policy making and that the only industry that can be replicated or created from scratch doesn't require physical commodities, doesn't require industrial tissue, doesn't require geographic or natural resources. It just takes policy making and human capital. And as such, can be created almost in a lab. So what we decided to do in Milan is to help our British friends to solve the Brexit problem, which, by the way, is also a Swiss problem. And we thought, how can we replicate the successful ecosystem of the City of London and offer the City of London a foothold in the European Union so that we can preserve the City of London's global role in the financial services markets. And we started from the idea of cluster, keeping things together and creating an environment that's business friendly. So we look back to the past, and we saw that Lex Mercatoria actually worked in the 14th century. So we decided, why don't we put together a district that can self-regulate itself through contractual autonomy and put together a district code. And we're working on that. Second, because we can't get on with the slow pace of justice, we decided to enter a protocol with the European Court of Arbitration and ensure that all disputes will be heard in arbitration. But still, we went a step further and we said we need common law to apply across the board to all disputes so that international investors can be reassured that basically the familiar ecosystem and environment they're accustomed to, they can traffic there. And that's because we thought, in the end, is it really territory the distinctive feature of a financial services center? No, it isn't a territory. It is a set of shared values, protocols, rules, habits. They are basically the foundation of an extraterritorial kind of a business system, business ecosystem. And we thought that this was really the way forward. So unlike some other financial services centers that are trying to steal business away from London, we started from one of the basic principles that Professor Manellis expressed right at the outset of this conference, that being an international financial services center means attracting business, but also having the influence of distributing business. Because if you can be at the same time supplier of services and customer, what do? You reaggregate the supply chain and you basically hedge your risk. So we thought that by doing this, we will create a permanent bridge in a new idea of Europe that could have four corners to it: Zurich, Milan, London, and Dublin. 2 countries firmly in the European Union, 2 countries outside of it, but yet within the idea that there are other frameworks and other way forward to build business-friendly ecosystems.
So you've been at great pains over the last few months to emphasize Milan as a bridge to London, not a competitor to London. So how do you see yourself really working with other cities?
Well, as I said before, Brexit isn't a British problem. It's a British problem, a European problem, and a Swiss problem. That is because, as Judith was rightfully pointing out, Swiss banks do business in the European Union through the MiFID passport via their UK branches. Now, we, a city, we've offered a way out, and we're working on offering better way out to Switzerland as well on this, in this idea of framing a new paradigm for Europe through the B license that get offered to banks outside of the European Union, but with exactly the same privileges and rights as a MiFID passport. So, for instance, Credit Suisse can come to Italy and do business via their Italian branch, but the capital requirements are going to be the same as before, and they can keep their balance sheet in Switzerland. The same approach we're doing with our Select Milan initiative for London, i.e. if Euroclearing comes to Italy and the clearinghouse is already 100% owned by the London Stock Exchange Group, revenues and profits will stay in the United Kingdom, while GDP growth and employment creation will migrate down to Italy. So this is the idea, that in globalization there is just one economy, right? And that goes over and beyond national borders. However, you need to offer pragmatic solutions to this kind of economic problems. And while I understand and I do appreciate German approach on layers of government, I also think that over-regulation and therefore these cages that are created by state laws, state rules, and the whole idea of national sovereignty do come in the way. So I think we need to take a very radical decision. Or either we shift everything to the city level, meaning we create these effectively city-states with quasi-governmental powers, or we have a problem. So I think that Brexit, I agree, is a wake-up call, but it's a wake-up call that we need to reshape the European Union as an idea. And also I think we're overlooking another big issue, which is security. I mean, these financial fluxes have enormous implication for national security, for intelligence cooperation, for anti-money laundering purposes, for terrorist financing. So we need to ensure that will be a working framework where all of this can be done in a safe, secure, and cooperative environment, because otherwise You know, again, look at the past, as Professor Mainelli always does. It used to be military power, then it became commercial power, then in the 20th century it was technological power, and I think that Amazon, Google, and Yahoo, for instance, are the United States Army. If you look at the CV of the people who work at Yahoo, Google, or Amazon, they all come from the Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Department of State. Why? Because you can't allow 600 million personal data, consumer behavior, expenditure, economic history, address, free movements through borders to be done without the United States government consenting to it. Now, let's look at the 22nd century. What's the war in the 22nd century? It's economic war, right? The embargo is the most powerful weapon you have to fight against an enemy. And there are countries that are well equipped to fight economic wars, not all of them. So we need to think about how to really make all of this interconnected to the point that there's going to be just one threat and one response.
Well, I always look to the past because I'm an accountant, not because...
We need alliances. We need to join forces, and therefore you and as we do, we need to be allies.
I was asked exactly the same question 2 weeks ago at a lunch with the staff of former Prime Minister David Cameron, and my answer was one word: London is open. And the highlight of my experience in the United Kingdom was my British citizenship. At the ceremony, I was basically told, you're becoming a British citizen because you chose to become one. And you chose to become one because you share the same set of values, traditions, customs, and features that we have here that make this city unique. So this ability of being born something else and transforming yourself into something new, I think is the very core and the very essence of London that's welcoming. You come here, you become a Londoner, you're exposed to fairness, to democracy, to meritocracy, and by all means you've got a glass ceiling here, but it's so high up that you can see through it. So it has to remain open, and it has to embrace change and everyone else, because our identity is the one that we chose to be, not what we were born with. Because centralization has proven to be a disaster and to be at the very core of Brexit. Competition is at the very heart of pricing, liquidity, efficiency, and quality. When in the European Union we had 3 financial services centers, Frankfurt, Paris, and London, the competition among those 3 should have leveled the playing field and make Paris and Frankfurt as efficient as London. Over-regulation, centralization was an attempt to bring London down to the level of Frankfurt and Paris. And this doesn't work. So I think we have all learned the lesson that federalism, probably at this historical turning point, is the correct choice. As for Trump, I think we're going to be surprised. The United States have proven over time that when a less than perfect candidate steps into the White House, sits on that chair in the Oval Office, then grows up and turns out to be an excellent president. And I remember this happened in the 80s with Ronald Reagan. I really hope this is going to be the case once again with Mr. Trump.